There's no really us and them. Like the whole sort of European domination that happened here in North America, all those people, some of which are our ancestors, they got they got clobbered by other peoples, like the English got clobbered by the Romans. So then what did they do? They got banged and they decided to take their violent ways to North America. But meanwhile, all of us are saying, but we're messing up the earth big time here. What's the what was the what gave us the vitality? What was where we really felt like we belonged and we belonged to each other and we belonged to the earth. And so what I've noticed is that healing process, that restoration process, that sense of earth honoring culture is where we really know we belong and where where we're coming from if we got a heart. It's not like an ideology. It's just like we honor the earth, air, fire, and water because that's what we are. And I guess what I'm saying is that I notice that longing and that desire is just as strong, if not stronger, in native communities. But it's not like they got it all figured out. They've been dealing with 500 years of genocide and amnesia and what is it, guns and Bibles and whatnot. And nothing wrong with the Bible except if it's shoved down your throat. And so you know literally.
Yes,
and
yes.
and so so I guess I'm just saying that this is this it's for me it's like a bootstrapping process, that we're all in this together. We're trying to support each other. We're trying to learn how to live again in a good way. And so this us and them about native peoples and non-native peoples and the colonists and the non-colonists and stuff, it's like I'm trying to get away from that stuff because it's all us chickens in the middle of space here, and we've got so much more in common with one another than we have that separates us. So that's kind of what I'm trying to focus on. As you were talking about before, when the corporations who are just looking at the bottom line and are not thinking about the consequences of their actions, it's like they're all humans. They're all part of humanity. They just got we're all sick in some way, and they're sick, but they got the power. They got the economic power and the military power, and so physically, it's tough to get around that. And that's what we're figuring out. Like, how can we do like a keto move on this whole thing? Because it's a situation that we all know is completely unsustainable and is bad for future generations. So you know we're trying to do the best we can to figure out how to get around that one.
Do you feel it's just part of evolution, or?
That's a great question. Like I guess I do, and so the sort of like the bad corporations are representative of, for me, like separate self consciousness. Like if we didn't think we were all separate and that we were all like in our own worlds, then we wouldn't have corporations that are destroying the earth and trying to take all the resources. So it's just like they're just representative of like the sickness in the human species. And so evolutionarily, for me, it just seems like, yeah, well, this is kind of a, what's the word for it? It's a growth experience, but you can't look at it for just like your own lifetime. You got to look at it like, um, 5,000 years of a kind of dominator model in culture in terms of the in terms of what we've grown into now all over the earth. But then you've always had people who've lived with the earth and said that they felt as though they belong to the earth, we belong to the earth doesn't belong to us. And that's right there to me. That's the difference in the worldview right there. But so evolutionarily, it just sort of seems like we're going from we knew without a shadow of a doubt that we belong to the earth. Then we go through this period of amnesia where we forget that we belong to the earth, and we come back to knowing that we belong to the earth, but at a whole different, higher level of understanding and creativity. It's like we didn't have like lasers and computers and whatever, and that's kind of the reason we mentioned Terence McKenna before. Why I like him is that he understands that we're very, very creative as people, as a species, and we're always like, we're wanting to create stuff. So technology is here to stay. It's just like, what kind of technology? I mean, I get on this Terence rap because I love him, because he's like, look at the plants, the intelligence of the plants for guidance. Like, look at them. They're the most, they're everywhere, and they're doing fine, and they're cooperating, and they're producing, light, and they're taking in sunlight and water and carbon dioxide and giving out some oxygen in return, and they're just like, they're not hurting anybody.
That's right. And with all our science, we can't match a leaf.
We can't match a leaf. That's the most incredible technology on the planet right now.
That's why the industrial age believes that they're smarter than nature, and you can't be smarter than nature.
Yeah.
So, in all your travels, you said you've been to Russia to be with the indigenous people 42 times?
Well, not to just the native peoples, but let's say I've traveled to Siberia maybe 15 or 20 times, and because as I said, there's the European part of Russia, and then there's the Siberian part of Russia where the native peoples. The kind of what you call wild native peoples, but like the Russians themselves, they're actually indigenous to Russia. They didn't come from any place, so it's sort of an interesting thing. They just have. I'm fascinated by this stuff. It's just like they have 1,000 years of not living in an earth honoring culture, although there's plenty left in Russia. But in terms of this whole thing of people who are most recently living in a traditional earth-honoring way, you have to go out to Siberia to see them. There's a few exceptions in way north of Russia for people who might be looking at this who are real Russophiles, but for the most part, the native peoples are out in Siberia.
Now, do they feel like they are part of the land, or that the earth is theirs?
Yeah, they feel like they're part of the land, and they're trying to restore their ceremonies and do their lives according to that sense that they belong to the earth and the cosmos, and it doesn't belong to them, and that they've got to pass it on in a good way to future generations.
Because that is what it's all about.
For me, that's what it's all about. It's like if we think the earth belongs to us, we're going to pay the price for that. And we're already paying the price.
Yes, I'm saying we are paying the price now.
Yeah, paying it in so many different ways.
Now, what do you find that they have in common over there with the native tribes over here?
Yeah, I think that was one of the beautiful things that I discovered, which is it's all one people. Particularly in the northern hemisphere, and that so many of the shamanic tradition, the earth honoring tradition, whatever you want to call it, is very similar all over the world. but particularly in North America, I mean in the northern hemisphere, North America and Siberia, you've just got so many of the same things. I mean, I remember when I went to Tuva, and they have feathered headdresses there,
Wow.
and it's like, whoa, this is incredible. And there's the whole ceremonial tradition and using fasting and prayer and the way that they're looking at the elders have a place in their culture instead of just relegated to some, we don't need you anymore kind of a place. There's all these pieces, and in fact, that's what my book is about. It's like,
Yeah.
well, it's like you got I'm trying to make an attempt in the book of saying these are the pieces that we need to put ourselves back together again. It just reminded me of like Humpty Dumpty, but we can put ourselves back together again because we got it in our DNA. We know how to do this. This isn't something. It's not rocket science. We just have to remember who we are, and it's such an exciting process, Gary. It's such an exciting process to remember who we are.
Now, these markings, are they from over there, or those from here, or they have them both places?
They have them in both. The petroglyphs are, and in some ways there's a lot of identical things about the petroglyphs in both places. And when I first discovered that, I just got the chills. And I remember this native Navajo man who was an elder of mine, one of my greatest teachers, and we went over to Siberia together, and he started talking about the petroglyphs on the rocks, and he could read it, and he talked about this tremendous back and forth migration between the peoples on, going back and forth and visiting each other and doing ceremony, and he's pointing to it's a language. The petroglyphs are a language, and what would be really cool, and I have it somewhere on my old site, but I find that comparison between the petroglyphs of both cultures endlessly fascinating. It's such a beautiful mystery of what we did before, kind of what we think of as common language. The kind of that was a different kind of a language to communicate our deepest experiences, a sacred language.
So this basically was their handwriting.
That's it. Well,
storytelling.
It's storytelling, and I think I was thinking about it. Yes, some of it is a little bit more mundane and could have to do with more, things like hunting grounds and so forth. But back then, it's like it's all one sacred, luminous dimension. But I was going to say that when I'm communing and feeling ecstasy around the petroglyphs, the information that's coming to me, and it's not just me, like everybody that I've talked to, is really about a kind of deep shamanic experience of a sense of that mysterious interconnection with life, with the stars and with the fire and with the earth, and that you just can't say it in English, so you couldn't say that's a really good thing for me to find out. It has to do with what we could think of as a more of a kind of common language, and I believe they had a very, in fact, I'm sure they had a regular common language and sort of to get practical stuff done. But then you have the artists, the shamans, the storytellers who are writing on the rock, and both pictographs and petroglyphs. So I think of it as a kind of really sacred language to express the deepest part of the human experience.